All right, folks. Well, welcome. My timer is counting down, so it's time to jump in. So I'm Rob. I'm president of a company called PowerPivot Pro. We've been around since about 2010, believe it or not, doing exactly this kind of work. Since the very beginning. So this is I think this is my personal favorite talk. This is the one that I am most excited about giving. I've only given it once before ever, and it was in a very private location. This is the first time, sort of on a public stage. And as the leader of a modern and rapidly growing analytics firm, I'll also tell you that I think this is the most important talk that I give. See if you agree afterwards, okay? But that's how I think about it. That's at least, I think, a relevant piece of information for you. So it's a 10 things talk, because everyone likes 10, It's somewhat arbitrarily chosen. We could have chosen more than 10, absolutely. There are some things that are not going to be mentioned. And so we're going to start with thing number 0, because I'm going to sneak an 11th thing in, but this is a zero indexed array. For those of you who were at the pre-con yesterday, this will be the only thing that's duplicated from yesterday, okay? So if you don't get nervous that you're going to be seeing the same thing. Why? What does this stuff do for us? This new set of tools from Microsoft, and oh, thank you very much. The coffee delivery is important. Yes, that'll be very useful halfway through. There's the usual stuff, right? Tremendous efficiency gains. You're expecting to hear this kind of stuff. Reduction in repetitive work, right? But really, 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 that's just boring. We're just inundated with messages like that. Let's cut to the chase and talk about what really, truly matters, which is making it rain money, okay? Like, whether that's for our organizations or for ourselves, or hopefully both, okay? That's really kind of what it's all about. I mean, more satisfying careers as well. We like to say that we spread happiness with this stuff, and it's true. People get happier in these sorts of careers when they're using these tools sort of in the right way. It's amazing. But yeah, I mean, I can always get your attention with money, okay? So this is why we're going to be doing this. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a few stories that are all 100% true, but effectively sanitized and anonymized to protect the innocent. Okay, so these are all stories from our clients, success stories. So the first one is huge company, massive company, household name. One of their biggest IT departments had spent 18 months on a single data project, and it started 4 different times with 4 different data platforms from 4 different vendors, okay, with 4 different consulting organizations. Each one of them just dead-ended and died. They walked away from those efforts with nothing to show for it. They'd spent over 6 figures in money. The cost in time and human suffering was far greater. Suffering is a real thing, okay? And it should be on balance sheets, but it's not, okay? And they tried us out with, sort of with the new methodology, honestly, because they really felt like they had nothing to lose at that point. Like they were looking at us saying, what you're telling us, like in terms of expense, even if we throw this project away, it'll be nothing like throwing away the previous 4. And they said, we'd like you to come out for a week. And we said, I don't know, a week's a long time. We could probably be done in a couple of days, and then you'll be ticked off that you're wasting all the money from those extra 3 days. They said, no, we would like you to come for a week, and they were right. It took a week. They were right. We were wrong. That project took a whole week. With one of us and 2 of them, and we were done in a week. And that project now runs an entire floor of a headquarters of a worldwide company in the Southern California area, okay? That thing is running today. It wasn't a prototype, okay? It's just done. Moving on, right? Another client was thinking about reversing a decision that they'd made a couple years earlier, a decision that they thought was going to help them. And they started to get the feeling that this decision, this change that they'd made to their business was actually hurting them. They didn't have any real good reason for believing it, but it was like this virus that had started to spread and gain momentum within the culture of their leadership team. And with 4 hours of work, we very conclusively proved to them that what they were doing was helping. In fact, it was adding $5 million a year to their bottom line. So it was working. But they were lining up to spend $3 million to undo the thing that they'd done. They were going to pay $3 million for the pleasure of losing 5 every year from now on. Okay? 4 hours. Okay? One time we were sitting in at a very large international company. We spent 2 days with them, and in the middle of the afternoon of the second day, we were crunching some numbers with them, and this number appeared on the screen. It was $14 million, and there was this trailing off. One of the people in the room said, "Wow, if that number is right," and then just stopped. There was no end to the sentence, And so eventually, I was like, "Okay, well, what?" It was $14 million in discounts that they had given to their customers in the previous year, in a category where the customers don't notice or care about discounts. It's $14 million they just thrown away, which also is the same thing as $14 million that they can go get back this year, and the year after, and the year after, and the year after. And this is where we started joking about, like, wow, if we had a percentage money saved, billing model, we'd be in pretty good shape right now, wouldn't we? We're like, that's awesome. 3 people part-time for a month, 1 of them from our company, 2 of them from the client. All 3 of us doing other things. None of it. We all had other responsibilities, other jobs, and other, things that were drawing our time. But that project, all it did was make their stock price go up, and it had been going down. And so I hear that's a good thing. And so clearly that got to the executive level of the whole organization. This is my personal favorite. 1 week again, okay? 2 people, 1 from our company, 1 from the client, and that was years ago now. That was a Power Pivot workbook, okay? That we built with them originally. Now I think it's a Power BI solution, because you can just sort of instantly convert those things. It's not a big deal, because again, it's the same stuff in both of the environments. It's the same platform. Microsoft has really gotten its act together and unified. It's crazy. It's awesome. As a former Microsoft employee, let me tell you, that's amazing. This workbook adds $25 million a year to the bottom line. Okay? And it's now into its 4th year of operation, so it's coming up on being a $100 million workbook. Not $100 million in revenue, $100 million in margin, income, whatever you want to call it. The person who sponsored that project has gone from having 0 direct reports to hundreds of direct reports at that company, and that's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Okay, that sounds like a good thing, is it? Yeah. Right. You can understand what would typically go hand in hand with those sorts of responsibilities, right? Okay, so these are all real, and it's not. These are, obviously, I picked the shiniest examples. Okay. Some of the shiniest examples anyway, but number 6, number 7, number 8, they don't fall off sharply. It's a smooth curve. There's a lot of stories like this. This isn't, these results really aren't exceptional from what we see. It's just that these are exceptional in the way that we can actually talk about them. Like, it's sometimes very hard to prove the impact, in a way that I can fit into 1 bullet point. Okay? So I've sort of picked those, cherry-picked them for that reason more than anything else. Okay, so the mission of this talk, all right? It's not a technical talk. We're not going to, no formulas are going to be harmed in this talk. I just want you to be thinking and enjoying. Data is exciting. It's an exciting thing, especially when you first start doing it, right? But then the realities tend to grind us down. It takes the fun out of it. And it turns out that when you're having fun and you're enjoying things, you actually are going to do a better job. It's another one of those things that should be sort of an official thing, right? Like, being happy makes you more effective. There's a lot of things that, again, I think the reality dulls us down of the grind, the day-to-day. And I want to get you thinking, with those fun parts of your brain again, the ones that actually make a big difference. Also to help you convince others, okay? this is meant, it's not a technical talk by design, so that you can actually help you communicate to other people in your organization what the benefits should be, right? You can give them sort of like down-to-earth, sort of layman's type of explanations of what kind of benefits you can provide, right? I mean, I'm all too familiar with this phenomenon of like an executive saying, oh, data, it's the new black, it's hot, go do some data, right? Like, okay, now what, right? Like, what do you do with it? Of course, we're gonna go data. We're gonna data hard, right? Like, but what are we actually gonna do? So help you communicate. And then also, like, for yourselves, like having a persistent cheat sheet of like, again, you get back into the grind, 6 months from now, you're down in the trenches, right? And you're like, oh, what should we be doing, right? It'd be good to have something to glance at and say, okay, oh, these are some things that we should be thinking about again. I forgot about that, right? Now, this animated talk is really like a piece of software that I've built. I don't hand that over to the convention organizers to just distribute freely, okay? I'm happy to give you a PDF version of it that's like a cheat sheet, okay? You email us at this address, we'll get it to you, okay? I'll get it to you. But no, this slide deck isn't going to go on the website. Sorry, too much work. You'll see. I think. I hope you'll see. And then lastly, this might be even the most important. Don't waste the gift that this new wave of tools represents. Okay, like for so long, and I'm not kidding. For so long, we have in the world of data, we have toiled just to get the basics done in a really crappy way. Okay, just barely treading water. And the first instinct when you get this new tool set, which is far better than any of the existing traditional methodologies and tools, the first instinct and overriding is like, yeah, now we're going to go do those same dumb things we used to be doing. We're just be doing them a lot faster and more efficiently. Okay? And even me, like the first year or plus that I was using these tools, that's what I was doing. I wasn't yet realizing, oh my gosh, the walls of the prison have fallen down. I just didn't see them fall. There's a big world out there. Let's go explore it. Okay? And I think that's the biggest thing I'm trying to combat here, is staying in a box that doesn't exist anymore. I don't want you to do that. And I've seen how real that is, even for us. All right, here are the 10 things. You're always supposed to put the agenda up first, right? I'm not going to read them to you because we're going to talk about each one of them one at a time. But the things that I do want to call out about these 10 things is that, first of all of them are easy to do with this wave of tools from Microsoft. Whether you're using the Power BI stack or what I call the modern Excel, Power Pivot, Power Query stack, because again, they're the same thing, okay? Or if you're using SSAS Tabular with an SSRS front end, I don't care. They're all the same languages, okay? The hard parts, the valuable parts of these things are all the same, all right? So, like, it doesn't matter which flavor you're using, you can do them with these tools. By contrast, none of them were easy to do with any of the traditional tool sets. And I'm picking on even Microsoft's traditional business intelligence tool sets. I'm picking on other vendors' traditional BI tool sets, and I'm also picking a little bit on Excel as well, like traditional Excel that lacked these engines, okay, the new engines. And they all pile up. Like you're going to see that like benefit number or thing number 7 is actually just like in some ways like a cumulative impact of like 1, 3, and 5. And I'm not even looking at the list right now. I'm just picking those at random. They all influence each other, and I don't think they add up. I think they multiply. They multiply in their benefit. So they're deliberately overlapping. Okay? Let's dive in. Number 1, subdivide and segment for effective action. Let's say you've got some big overall number for your company or your department or whatever, right? 31%. Maybe we're talking about customer retention rate, maybe we're talking about profit margin. I don't know, it doesn't matter, okay? 31%. It's kind of a meh overall number. It's good to have that number. It is. It's good to know that it's 31% and not be going, I don't know, right? But having this number is just the beginning of a conversation. It's not in itself inherently valuable. It tells you sort of like, wow, okay, we're doing great there. We don't have to really do anything. Maybe, But if you look at it going, I think that could be better, now what? Okay? The human brain looks at this at a top-level number. I'm illustrating this with graphics and color, but imagine a report, some top-level scorecard or report that has a 31% on it. Okay? What the human brain does with that is immediately, subconsciously, unconsciously, thinks that the underneath looks like this. Okay? That's the default. That's the only reasonable default you could come up with, is that, hey, everything's kind of like that under the hood. It's all one big, mishmash of the same thing. It's like one consistent material, okay? And not only is it all 31% everywhere, but you also tend to assume that the chunks, are all of relatively the same importance. And you can probably see where this is going, right? It's not like that. The reality, when you start to break things down, is shocking. Over and over and over again. It's shocking. And it can look like this instead, okay? They're not all the same size. They're not all the same importance. And they can have dramatically different characteristics. And now I'll bring it back up to be side by side. Now, I went to great pains, folks, that the weighted average of the colors on the left is exactly the color on the right, okay? I promise you, the RGBs multiplied by area, it's the same thing, okay? I'm a nerd. That's what I did, okay? But imagine when you start trying to bring the 31% number up. Like, if you assume that everything is equally important and at the same 31%, you're going to start leaning on people, for instance, because it tends to be that people correspond to these individual chunks, right? You're going to start leaning on the 33% person, telling them that they've got to get their act together when they're actually one of the better ones, right? Or even better, don't be picking on this person. You can demotivate a top performer. Just for example, this isn't the only way that this plays out with people, for instance, but you could demotivate a top performing, manager or whatever by telling them, him or her, that they've got to get that 31% up, right? And then an argument ensues, and there's all kinds of. What you should be doing is talking to that person, saying, "What is it that you're doing so well?" That's what you should be doing. You're missing an opportunity to understand what's going right, while at the same time ticking off a top performer. Don't do that, okay? This right here. If you fix this one segment, it's more than, it's bigger than what you would expect. It's not 1/9 of everything, it's 2/9 of it in this particular example. You fix that, that's your greatest opportunity to quickly move the needle. Wouldn't it be great to know that? I know that every single one of these 10 things is going to feel a little bit like this, like obvious in some sense, right? Of course, okay? But what I want to really drive home is that, when it's time to fix something, when it's time to change something, if you're not subdividing, if you're not breaking it down, you're wasting your time. You have to decompose into the components, whether it's region, product line, people, whatever, right? You have to decompose, and that has to be readily easy. It's not like something that has to take, you can't be like, oh, it's going to take us forever to build decomposability and subdivisibility into our reporting solutions. That can't be a tax. It has to be something that's sort of ready to rock from the beginning. And that's what these tools can do for you. The subdividing is built in. So, for example, if you're a company that runs most of its BI and reporting on static reports that are coming out of SQL queries, you're not doing this. I know you're not doing this. You just ain't, okay? Which means organizationally you're lying to yourselves. You're not actually, able to change. All right. Number 2, employ fair metrics for an undistorted reality. What does it mean to be fair? All right, well, we got a small room here. We can talk, right? Let's do this. I'm going to do this to you 3 times today, okay? Just so you know. Repeat after me. Raw numbers like total dollars. Come on. Raw numbers like total dollars. Oh, that sounds so good. Are often incredibly deceiving. One more time with feeling. Incredibly deceiving. All right. And we tend to count raw numbers like total dollars first, don't we? Because they're the easiest thing to count. Not because they're the best thing to count, but because that's the easiest thing to roll up. So it's like the first column in every single report you ever look at is, right? And it sounds like that, actually. It really does. So that can distort your picture in a positive direction. It can distort it in a negative direction. You don't know. All right? And so here's the second part of repeat after me. Here we go. About half of your metrics. Oh, so you kind of messed that one up. About half of my metrics is what you should have said. All right. About half of my metrics, I'll change the slide for the next time. About half of my metrics should use one or more of the following words. Okay? I'll let you just repeat the bullet points. Per. It sounds good, doesn't it? Per. Okay. Versus. Adjusted. Corrected. Indexed. Let's see how good we are. All right. So undistorted, you want to see a true picture. All right. There's also, I'm sure you have other versions of this that'll come to you over time. All right. Let me give you some examples of this instead of leaving you hanging. Right. So you can look at growth versus prior month, and then you can do a seasonally corrected, for instance, growth versus prior month. Like if you're in the retail industry and you're comparing November versus February, you're not doing anything right. Different parts of the year make up different parts of your overall business. Like if you say, hey, December was a really good month compared to November, you might not, you probably shouldn't be in that line of work, right? Or that November was awesome. Wow, we had a really good day in November. We went black on that day. We went positive. But like, you can even find, for instance, like down here, this is a real example from a while ago, right? That the direction of the change can actually be deceiving. Not just the amount. You can actually think that you had a bad month, but it was actually pretty good, or vice versa. It's not just like, oh, we thought it was 10% and it's really 8%, right? Sometimes the sign, the direction can change. Another example of this is if you look at just sort of like, hey, like maybe some of we did better this year, but we actually opened a lot of new stores and closed a bunch of old stores. Like that masks so many things. Another thing that's really interesting is that did you know that like I think very often February isn't the shortest month of the year in terms of weekdays? Why would we ever compare month versus month? Why would we ever do that without adjusting for essentially like how long that month was, right? It's just so stupid. It's really stupid. But it was inflicted on us by crappy tools. Crappy tools are why we have to do that, right? We tend to say, oh, that'd be so hard to do to adjust for the number of days that like we just don't have time. We need a number. Having a number is better than having no number, right? Right? Yeah, so let's go, right? That's what happens. That's the reality. All right, what'd you think of that one? Make sense? Like, these tools make fair metrics so easy, and also, I'm gonna let you know a little secret, fun. It's fun to come up with fair, sort of like apples to apples type of metrics. And if you really want to challenge people, you can stop putting the raw metrics in the first column. Just start talking about the things that matter. How are we doing? All right, see the whole picture in one place. So this is a very common reality, okay? There's a report that's being delivered to someone. And that report, of course, it comes from a particular system, doesn't it? That report is a reasonable picture of what's going on in that system, at least one slice of it anyway. And then there's a bunch of other reports from a bunch of other different systems, and they're all being, squished in on this one human being. And this picture looks like, that's a well-informed person. Right? It's actually the opposite. This person has nothing. And when you're getting, and really sometimes it is dozens or hundreds of reports that people have access to or being, inundated with on a daily basis, that's the same as like having no information at all, because we're trying, at that point, you have to keep everything in your head, assuming you even look at all of them, which we know that no one does. No one looks at these things. One of the most common things that I hear all the time, we have like 10,000 reports, and we look at people aren't even accessing them, right? But even if they did look at them, if they did open them or whatever, Like now they have to sort of keep one thing in mind from one system and then think about what the other system told them. To get a complete picture of the business or what's relevant to them, they have to act like a computer. Now, it turns out that we have something better than that. We actually have real computers. We have that technology, okay? And to give people, simply to give them a compact, all-up view isn't hard anymore. It used to be incredibly difficult, impossible. It started out with, you know, years and years of data piping, right, before you ever got a single dot on a chart. And so that never happens. You know, it's so easy now. It's really easy. The $100 million workbook, this is primarily what it does. That's its only real innovation, folks, is that it does this, okay? That's what it does. Just putting everything in one compact place. And by the way, remember I mentioned how things need to pile up? This thing that you put in one place, make sure that it's subdividable, right? These aren't things you do in isolation from each other. Make sure it's subdividable. Make sure it employs fair metrics. Now we're talking, okay? When you get something that's doing all of these things, you're really doing something right. And again, there's nothing in here in these solutions that we end up building that is like the discovery of some amazing new algorithm, right? Like that we're gonna hide from the world, but we are gonna hide it from the world because we know we're competitive. But it's not like some like fuzzy logic, you know, like AI thing. You know, that's coming, I suppose. But it's not like that. These things are simple. That's the dirty little secret, folks, which is awesome for the people in the room because there's so much opportunity out there, a ridiculous amount of opportunity. And the whole world just sitting there going, just completely clueless. Opportunity everywhere. Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. And it's not rocket science. Everyone else is going to think it's rocket science, okay? It's going to look like rocket science on the outside, but it's not for us, okay? We can do this. All right, here's another one. Driving, you want to make things change, okay? You want to make things change. Well, so let's say this level of the organization understands, oh gosh, we really need to get this blah, blah, blah metric up to 35% or something like that. If we do that, that'll save our bacon, okay? Well, that's great and all, but it turns out that those changes have to actually be, you know, realized, executed, many, many levels below. You know, the executives don't service the customers or whatever, right? The leadership team doesn't do that. The line level does. How do you get hundreds or dozens or maybe even thousands of human beings to behave in a slightly different way? Like, most of the time, folks, what we have found is that you know, there's two kinds of improvement. There's like super smart, like, okay, we just realized that, for example, we shouldn't undo that change to our business. We should keep it because it's adding $5 million a year. That's one single strategic smart thing. Those are awesome, okay? That's only half the picture, though. The other part of improvement is lots and lots and lots of, you know, incremental small improvements by lots of people many times per day, okay? And and that's often the problem. That's often the thing that has to happen. And how do you do that? How do you make that happen? Well, one of the things you do is you measure it using fair metrics in a subdividable fashion. Okay. All right, so just a couple of just quick screenshots of heavily redacted, okay, of what some of these scorecards can look like. They're also very, very clearly Excel type of shapes. But at the same time, you can do things like this in Power BI with the card views as well. Maybe just not quite as many metrics. You know, it all kind of depends upon what you need to measure. And both of those, you know, quick screenshots, they reflect lots of different systems, putting lots of information, you know, from different systems in one place, subdividable. You're getting tired of me, you know, it's going to sound like the 12 days of Christmas at some point, right? Later in the talk, I'll be like, and this one, number 8, is the culmination of number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Anyway, so just as an example of how this might work, okay? So here's the picture of the organization again, right? And the leader of Area 1, Okay, that area 1 tile in the slicer corresponds to a human being that's responsible for area 1. Okay? And the area 1 manager can use this scorecard as a discussion tool and a measurement tool for working with their 3 direct reports who manage the 3 regions underneath area 1. By clicking each individual tile, you can see what the scores are for the entire, across the entire scorecard for that entire segment of the business. Does that make sense? Like that previous scorecard would all update in response to clicking one of these tiles. Give me some feedback. Does it not make sense? Oh, yes, it doesn't make sense? All right. Thanks. Okay. And then it continues. So each of those, like the Region 1 manager, can then have meetings with their direct reports, measuring that. This is how the last 2 examples that I mentioned at the beginning, the $100 million workbook and the stock price going up workbook, those projects, it's sort of like dismissive to call them a workbook. It's an application. It's a system that was built. Both of those are exactly this kind of scorecard. It's not one improvement. It's not one single smart stroke of a pen. It's thousands of small improvements every single day. Any questions about that? Just making too much sense? I like questions, though. All right. Yes, please. So the question is, our company, do we typically engage with the executive level or a particular department? The honest answer is it's all over the map. What really matters is that somewhere there's someone who has either glimpsed what these tools can do, gotten a sense of it, gotten a whiff of it, and gone, oh, I think this is going to be a big deal for us. That happens. And that person could be anywhere in the org. Okay? And then another thing that happens is that someone's just so fed up, right, with not being, so one of those projects, the really important one, like the $100 million, workbook that I like to talk about, they went to IT and asked for this project to be done, and IT said, great, we can start in 18 months, right? And like sooner or later, people just see it as like, you know what, this is just dumb. There's got to be a better way. And they go looking and they're like, this sounds like a better way. And then they find out that they're right. We, at the moment, we don't do a lot of outbound sales. It's people who find us more than anything. And so we work with all different strata, right? And there's really no single pattern. There's multiple patterns. All right. Oh yeah, please. Yeah, nouns and verbs. Yep.
Are you going to address that?
Yeah, nouns and verbs is coming. Yeah, great question. That's Mr. Foreshadowing. All right. So forensics, knowing whether something helped or hurt. Again, really straightforward. Of course we want to be able to do this, right? Most of these things can be prefaced with the 2 words, of course. That doesn't mean that they happen. Okay? Duh, it's obvious, but it's not happening. I know it's not happening. I've seen too many things. I've seen too many companies. I know it's not happening. It's just not, even though it's obvious in some sense. So, your company's run an annual holiday promotion for 15 years where you heavily discount something, and yeah, your sales go way up or something. Of course they do. It's the holidays, right? How do you know that it's the promotion that's helping? Right? We've found this sort of pattern over and over again. It's kind of a funny story that I can't give you too many particulars about, but we've been asked once whether the introduction of underwear into a particular retail environment was cannibalizing the sales of other things. Cannibalistic underwear, Some things are just too funny to make up. Website changes. You made a change to your website. Is that improving click-through? Is it improving engagement, right? Like, you can tell that the number changed, right? But is that because of the time of year, right? Is that because of something else? You have like 15 different narratives that can fit that top-level number that you get, It went from 31% to 29%. Did it hurt, or was that just sort of normal for this time of year? You know, like our website traffic drops every year in April, right? And I'm assuming it's because of like spring break or something. But every year, April is a little bit of a down. And so, like, I don't know, should we oversteer? Should we overreact? You know, we got to be careful about these things. I'm sure you have examples, all kinds of things that, you know, changes that you're making, and you want to know whether they're helping or hurting. And if it might be helping, even better. Sometimes it's helping in some components and it's hurting in others. What's that? That's subdividing. Okay? Like, we ask these stupid yes/no questions because that's the best we could do with the old tools. Is it helping or hurting? Right? Maybe it's helping some places and hurting others in completely dramatically opposing magnitudes. That happens. But it all blends together into one overall number, and you're like, well, must have been good. Stick with it. You know, more of that. All right. Look, I just said that, the piling up benefits, right? All right. Okay, you got a lot of valuable thinkers at your organization. You are some of your valuable thinkers at the organization. And there's a concept in finance called debt service, right? Which is, you know, paying off the interest on your loans. There's also a concept where your debt service becomes so great, your monthly outlay of interest payments consumes all of your available disposable money, okay? And that's when you're sunk. You get into a death spiral, right, financially speaking. I think there's a similar concept in spreadsheets, okay? The world runs on Excel today. It absolutely does. You know, all those big BI systems, the old traditional BI systems that we tell ourselves, those are the thing. They're not the thing. They're the thing that's being used to press the export button, okay, to populate Excel spreadsheets. That's what's happening, okay? Again, I can say that with confidence now. I don't have to, I'm not worried about it being controversial. That's the way the world works. Everyone confesses that to me in hushed tones in a private room. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's just like every other company. You know, it's no big deal. You're not confessing. There's nothing wrong with you folks. It's the world. Excel's a great tool. It really is. And it's great because it's known by business people. Right? Having the business knowledge, the knowledge of the needs, the knowledge of all the nuances and the language and the exceptions of the business is really important. And to have that in the same brain as the ability to execute on it, that's why Excel is so popular, folks. It's never going away, ever. All right? But there's a dark side to this, right? Which is that you know, the best things are jokes that also happen to be true. The worst thing, someone who's good at Excel, the worst thing they can ever do in their entire career is build something that people really like. Okay? Because now they're chained to that. And I think, hold on. Here we go. Oh yeah. I don't know my own slide very well yet. Hold on a second. I'm gonna just jump ahead for a moment. I want you to see. Oh no, that's later. Apologies. Okay. So like for example, imagine being able to schedule the refresh of a report, right? Like these people who build something valuable that everyone likes and starts to use, and the company starts to get better because of this information, they now are responsible for producing that thing over and over and over again, like every day or every week or every month or whatever, okay? And with traditional Excel, that's a very, very non-trivial investment of time just to keep that spreadsheet afloat with the latest data at all times. And if they're good and they build multiple things that are useful, it's not long before maintaining and just pumping the latest data through their portfolio of spreadsheets, that consumes their whole week. And at that moment, their manager wonders what happened. You used to be so amazing. You used to be able to do things. You can't do things anymore. And they start to think that maybe there's something cultural here. Like when they were new, they were awesome. But then like all my other analysts got a hold of them and told them, oh no, sandbag, right? No, that's not what's happening. They got full, you know? They can't do anymore. So if we give them tools that allow them to, you know, schedule refresh, for instance. So the first one is, this is from a Power BI screenshot. This is a Power Pivot for SharePoint screenshot. These are screenshots from the partner firm that we work with, the Power On folks who are here. This is their Power Update tool. And I really love their screenshots because it really makes clear like just what you can do with these things. You can schedule You can schedule these things to refresh themselves. You can build something and have it not be a ball and chain around your ankle, okay? And plus, if it's subdividable, okay, then all the requests for changes that come in, oh, this is great, but we need to see it broken out by blah, blah, blah. If it's subdividable, that's really easy for them to do. Most Excel spreadsheets are not subdividable. Traditional Excel spreadsheets, subdividability, divisibility doesn't come for free. In fact, it doesn't come at all. So if you free them up, they can be thinkers again. Tripwires, AKA alerts and exceptions. These tools are so amazing that you can deploy them as like robots that are scanning not just your data, but also like crazy intersections of your data. Like if you've got like, let's say 250 different product lines and 500 different locations, all of the combinations of those, that's a lot, right? Imagine the report that's 500 by 250 lines, right? Ugh. But if one of those combinations starts to spike very suddenly in a negative direction or a positive direction, that'd be good to know, right? Might not mean anything, it could be an aberration, but in some cases, it's an indication that something is really important going on. And you want to be able to jump on that and watch it in real time. You can absolutely write scanners with these formulas and these tools that go ripping through all those combinations and looking for things that are outliers and letting you know when they happen. We should be doing that, right? It makes a lot of sense. But the old tools just simply can't do it. These can. All right. One version of the truth. This has been a big theme in business intelligence for a long time, right? All these things, they give us the ability to publish something to a central location, let people consume it from lots of different locations, you know, browsers, mobile devices, whatever. The third one, stop wrestling over my Excel can beat up your Excel, okay? Just by necessity, very often reporting is outsourced to each individual department to report on some sort of core metrics, and they all use different definitions for the same thing, okay? That, you know, I'm sure that happens everywhere in this room. You know, the rogue versions that are running around, and even just, you know, the ability to stop having people ask you for the latest. You know, if you're one of the individuals producing these things, if it's always in the same place and it's always up to date, that question goes away and you can go back to being a thinker. I used to, when the first time I heard one version of the truth, I bristled at the term. Like it was some sort of like authoritarian, like, you know, like, I don't know, like Soviet thing or something, right? But I get it now. I absolutely do. If you have a million things that are trying to tell you the same thing, you have nothing. And if you have one thing, you can improve it and get smarter about it and make it the thing that it should be. It's a big deal. Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, so the question is, if you've got 100 different teams producing their own versions, do we have a strategy for wrangling that? Well, at the highest level, you always have to think of people as selfish, okay? Like, you can't say to them what you're actually thinking, right? Which is, you know, you're cooking the books, you're making mistakes, right? This is chaos, right? You can't say that. You can't say you don't trust their numbers, right? Even though you don't, right? What you got to say is just like, listen, we're gonna free you of the burden of building that, okay? And you got to stick to that line, right? You can't. Well, if you've got executive support, you've got corporate support, that's always incredibly helpful. You know, like if you don't actually have the political power to influence them. But another really effective strategy I have found is that you go and you build something, even if it hasn't been like approved or blessed yet, go and build it and then have an important person see it. Don't talk about it, okay? Don't talk about it. These things, you can build things so quickly with this stuff. In fact, every single one of those projects that we talked about, like we built it and called it a prototype. We all knew it wasn't. Called it a prototype, put it in front of an executive and said, I don't know, what do you think? You think we should do this? You know? Right? You know? I've watched some of our sponsors at our clients navigate those waters, and I've come away very impressed. I've learned a lot. By default, I'm a knock obstacles over with my forehead person. Don't be that person, you know? Someone says, hey, you're trying to replace our existing BI tool with this new stuff, right? And deep down you're going, yeah, damn right we are, right? Right? But don't say that. No, this goes with your stuff, right? And whenever you rebuild this important solution that we built, you rebuild it in that other, traditional monolithic thing. As soon as you've got it built, we're going to switch to it. No big deal, right? And everyone goes away, and they never build it, and it's totally fine, right? Like over and over and over again. That's the path always looks like that. All right, we're running down, less than 4 minutes. Foster, better questions, right? That's what we've been talking about the whole time. Let's ask better questions. So, in the old days, we would say things like, hey, what was our sales number last month? I don't even know. Like we're fumbling around in the dark, just hoping to have a crumb, okay? That's the old way, all right? Well, in the new game, that person asks a slightly different question. They say, instead of what was the number, they say, did it go up or down last month? Because that's what, the actual number isn't necessarily the most important thing. Which way are we headed? Okay? That's what we're really after. Okay? And that requires a calculation of this month versus the previous month, which was it's a slight complication based on what we used to do. Okay? But it's doable now. And then either someone else or the same person later, okay, says, you know what? No. We don't really want to know that. We want to know is did seasonally adjusted sales go up or down last month? That's what we really want to know. Fair metric, right? And then the next person goes, okay, that's great. But what about margin? Okay, because sales dollars is just sort of like we can't spend sales, right? We spend margin. So why are we always measuring one of these secondary things? We really want to measure the thing, right? Okay, so let's talk about seasonally adjusted margin month over month. Wouldn't that be good to know? And then the next person goes, and that margin change. How much of that was driven by changes in revenue versus changes in cost? Let's break that down because we really got to get into it, And the next person goes, but that won't even be the same number across different regions and different product lines. I bet it's going different directions in different places, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Okay. And then lastly, someone says, let's put out a sliceable scorecard, one version of the truth scorecard, to drive improvement on those metrics across the whole organization. This is the sort of thing that you want, okay? As this gains a momentum of its own. It gains a culture of its own. And you want this. Okay. All right, and the last one. We're not going to do the repeat because we're running out of time. I know you're really upset, okay? But informing people is worthless. Controversial statement, okay? Kinda. Informing people is worthless unless it translates into improved action. It's not informing that we want. It's better action that we want. It's the only thing that matters. Forget informing. Let's talk about action. And one time I was asked to make a slow report run faster. It was a 100,000 row pivot table. Like, of course, what? It was a time card report. They were running this thing multiple times a day looking for stores that were empty because no employees showed up. Okay? They didn't need this. They needed the empty store detector. Okay? Like, that told them when they should take action. Right? It's more like an alert thing again. And this is the noun and verb concept. We've been cranking out nouns, the report, the this, the that, right? When we should be talking about what are the things we need to change, because each person only has so many things that they can do to improve or to damage the business. Let's work backwards from those. Let's advise them whether they should turn that knob to the left or the right. When should they flip this switch versus not flip this switch? this is a completely exciting way to think. Like you start thinking like this, and you've got a career, a forever career in front of you of being engaged, excited, and valuable. All right, so this is the last one. Okay. You know, things are changing ever more rapidly, and they seem stable until they're not. But we have advanced warning. We're at the tip of the spear. Okay. And if you want the PDF version, just drop us a note. So thanks, folks. We ran right to the wire. Thank you very much.